Hi, this is Annindita Palaus, and I am back as promised with part 2 of the video series that I started last week on the 7 spiritual laws of success. If you haven't seen the first video, then check out the description. It is called Does Deepak Chopra Even Know What He's Talking About? And the reason, as I mentioned in that video, I used that as a headline is because I read this book for the first time like 10, 11 years ago, and back then even though I understood a lot of the things, but some of the concepts that he spoke about were totally new to me. They were totally alien concepts. And when I first read those things, I just literally couldn't understand what is he talking about. And I was also wondering, all these different quotes that he often uses from the Vedas, if he himself really understands those quotes. Because I didn't understand them. But it took me quite some time, and not just time, but I believe it took me a certain amount of life experiences. And of course, a lot of other teachers that I had been following, a lot of different things that I had been reading, a lot of different books, not just Deepak Chopra books, but slowly these same teachings started making more sense to me. Because all teachers have different ways of expressing the same thoughts. I just felt like the way certain thoughts were expressed in some of Deepak Chopra books were a little bit more complicated for me as a beginner 10 years ago. But right now, of course, everything that I read totally makes sense. And that's why I decided to make this series on this book, which is one of my favorite Deepak Chopra books, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And today I will be describing the first spiritual law of success, which is the law of pure potentiality. And this chapter begins with this beautiful quote from the Rig Veda. In fact, I love to use this quote even in my Abundance Revolution workshops. In the beginning, there was neither existence nor non-existence. All this world was unmanifest energy. The one breathed without breath, by its own power. Nothing else was there. I just feel that this little quote pretty much encapsulates everything that there is. And the law of pure potentiality that Deepak Chopra explains, it is also known as the law of unity. And what this law really talks about is this, that each and every one of us is just pure potential, waiting to be unleashed, waiting to be discovered. Because we are all the same energy. That's why it is also known as the law of unity. Because we are the same energy. It is the same energy that breathes through the entire creation, that breathes through us. The same energy that animates all life forms, the entire universe, not just Earth, but the entire universe. The energy that created the entire universe is the same energy that we are all made up of. So how could there be any limitation or any lack in our experience if we are that energy, if we are manifestation of that energy? That unlimited energy that this whole universe is made up of knows no limitations. It has no boundaries. It has no judgments. And that is what we are all made up of. And he explains it very beautifully by saying that the field of pure potentiality is your self. And then he also talks about the difference between being self-referral and object referral. Self-referral means that you are only going within when you have any doubts, when you have any questions. You are only referring to the self. And by self, it is not the ego self that he is talking about. It is that self that is the pure potential. The self that he talks about is the field of pure potentiality is your true self. That is the self that he is talking about. Or are you object referral? By object referral, he means that are you constantly looking outside of yourself for approval, for feeling worthy. He mentions that when we are object referral, then we are constantly seeking approval from others. And I have definitely seen that to be true. That when you are constantly outward looking, you're also trying to control others because you want their approval. You also want to control them in a certain way. You want them to think about you in a certain way. You want them to respond to you in a certain way. So you are constantly focused about how you can control and manipulate others. And this is because you are so dependent on others for your approval, for your feeling of safety and security. Because at the end of the day, approval represents safety and security. If you're able to get somebody's approval, that means they like you or maybe even love you. And love is the ultimate form of security. If they love you, then they will help you, then they'll be there for you, and you will feel safe and wanted and needed and secure. That is the reason why we are always looking outside for outside approval. And when we don't get that, then we try to control others. So we are able to get that and we are able to feel safe and secure again. And this is what happens when we are living a life that is constantly looking outside, which Deepak Chopra calls object referral, that your life feels totally out of your control. Because no matter how smart you are, no matter how successful you are, but there is no way you could control outside factors all of the time. You cannot control people all the time. You cannot control how people are going to respond to you all of the time. You cannot control how people, whether or not people will be approving of all your actions all the time or not. And now, if you are living a life where you are constantly feeling the need for people's approval from outside, then instead of being authentic to your true self, the self that is the field of pure potentiality, you will start taking up these fake identities or a facade. It is your ego self, which is a combination of all these fake identities that you pick up, thinking that this is what others want you to be, and thinking that these fake identities will get you the approval that you are seeking in order to feel safe and secure once again. And what happens is the more of these fake identities you accumulate, the more limited you become, and the less in touch with that field of pure potential that you truly are, you become. So, in order to reverse that, it is important that you let go of that object referral attitude towards life and become more self referral. Because when you're object referral, it is always coming from a place of fear and lack. And there is an intense need to control things. Like I just explained, in order for you to feel safe and secure, you need to control everything that is happening around you. Your true self, on the other hand, is immune to outside criticism. And it is also humble. And like Deepak Chopra mentions in this book, it feels superior to no one because it recognizes that everyone else is that same self and the same spirit in different disguises. So when you are self-referral, you don't feel like you are superior to anybody and you don't feel like you are inferior to anybody. There is this feeling of being equanimous. There is this feeling of just being equal. There is this attitude of being non-judgmental. You don't judge since you know that is the same energy. It is the same energy that is just manifesting itself in different forms and different disguises. But it is still the same pure potential, that pure raw energy that the entire creation is made up of. And therefore, that gives you this non-judgmental attitude towards everything, all people, all situations, all circumstances. When you are self-referral, instead of being object referral, then you have true power. It is not the kind of power where you have to exert force. In fact, this reminds me of this very beautiful book I read some time ago called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, where he explains the difference between force and power. And he explains this that when you are vibrationally at a lower place, operating from the place of fear and ego-based beliefs, then you have to exert force in order to operate in this world. And when you are vibrationally at a higher level of energy, at a higher level of consciousness, what Deepak Chopra refers to as being self-referential, then you have access to this field of infinite potential. And then you have real power. You don't have to exert force in this world, in your day-to-day life, in order to get things done. In fact, that true power, when you are self-referential, you have true self-power, inner power. And that inner power makes you like a magnet to everything that you want. In fact, a lot of spiritual leaders have that kind of inner magnetism that just attracts masses to them. It draws people to you and it also draws things that you want to you. And this is the universe's way of supporting your desires. When you are in touch with that universal energy, then the universe automatically supports all your desires. It automatically provides for you and everything that you ever want. And then the book also suggests some very useful tips on how you can apply the law of pure potentiality in your life. And a couple of things that he suggests is, of course, practice of daily silence. Like every day when you wake up in the morning, just being silent for the first few hours in the day. If few hours is too much, then just 1 hour, just beginning with 1 hour. and then slowly increasing it. And in fact, he also suggests that finally you come to a place where you can go for a whole day without speaking, completely in silence, and eventually a whole week. But of course, that's something that you have to probably work up to. For most people, it will probably be just starting with 1 hour in the morning when you wake up, just being silent. Secondly, he of course recommends meditation, because meditation is the best way of getting in touch with the real you, the self, the field of pure potentiality that is you. And also being in nature. Of course, it is not a surprise. All spiritual teachers talk about being in silence, being in nature, meditating. These are pretty much the basics of getting in touch with that field. And lastly, he also recommends practicing non judgment. And non judgment comes naturally when you start following the first three suggestions, which is cultivating silence, practicing meditation, and being in nature. Once you start doing these three things on a daily basis, you will automatically see that non judgment just becomes part of your nature. You are not able to judge anymore because you start seeing the connection. You start seeing how connected you are to everything else, how nothing is really as separate and as disconnected as it appears in this time space reality. And the more you meditate and also practice silence, the more you get in touch with that field of pure potentiality. And the more you get in touch with that field, again, non judgment is not something that you have to work hard towards. It just becomes a natural habit for you to be non judgmental, because you just start feeling the unity. It's not an intellectual thing anymore. It's not just an intellectual concept anymore that you have learned from a book and it sounds good to talk about. So that's why you talk about it. You actually have first hand experience. And that's why practicing silence, being in nature, and having some kind of meditative ritual is so important. Because if you have these three rituals in place, then in my opinion, non judgment just comes naturally to you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back again next week with the second law, that is the law of giving. So stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you like this video, then like it, share it, and leave your comment below. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.